In December, Bankrate asked Americans what they would do if a $1,000 emergency landed on them tomorrow. A car, a tooth, a boiler. The answers are the reason I want to start somewhere other than which fund to buy. Bankrate asked 2,564 American adults how they would handle a $1,000 emergency. 30% said they would cover it from savings. A third said they would borrow it. A credit card carried for a few months, a personal loan, a text message to a family member. Notice that the money in that survey and the money you are thinking about investing tend to be the same money. Money in the market can be sold on any trading day. The price is whatever the market decided that morning, which you do not control. A car transmission goes on the Tuesday in a bad month, and you sell into the bad month. So the first decision is about the money itself. Can this $1,000 be left alone through a year you would rather it wasn't? If you would need it back, it is not investment money yet, and the money to invest is the next 1,000. Which brings up the option most people take by default, which is to leave it in savings and decide later. When I pulled the FDIC's own rate table, the national average savings rate came out at 0.38%. The average paid across every insured bank and credit union in the country, weighted by how much money sits in each. Leave $1,000 in the average American savings account for 20 years, and you finish with $1,079. That is the FDIC's own published rate, held flat for 2 decades, which it will not be, but the shape of the answer survives. $79 of interest across 20 years. That is an average, and averages hide the good ones. If your savings account pays more, keep it. For money you need soon, savings is the right answer. The same 1,000 in a fund tracking the S&P 500 at the 10% average Fidelity publishes for that index since 1957 lands near 6,700, assuming the next 2 decades resemble the last 7, which is an assumption, and I want it said out loud rather than buried. That path also contains years like 2008, when the index lost more than a third of its value. Both of those numbers are choices. One of them just feels like waiting. So say the money can be left alone. The decision people skip is the account itself. A brokerage account and a Roth IRA can hold the exact same fund. The difference is what the IRS does about the growth. In a regular taxable account, you pay tax on the dividends the fund pays out each year, and on the gain itself when you sell. In a Roth, you contribute money you have already paid tax on, and the IRS treats a withdrawal as qualified once the account has been open 5 tax years and you are past 59 and a half, at which point the growth comes out tax-free. For 26, the IRS caps IRA contributions at $7,500 across all of your IRAs, and $8,600 if you are 50 or older, or your taxable compensation for the year if that is less, because an IRA runs on earned income. The Roth carries its own income test on top of that. A single filer contributes the full amount below a modified adjusted gross income of $153,000, and the ability phases out completely by $168. $1,000 sits comfortably inside that cap, which is the useful part. The argument for a Roth at this size is straightforward. The balance is small now, the timeline is long, and tax-free growth is worth the most on the money that has the longest to compound. Taking money back out of a Roth before retirement has its own rulebook. Treat what goes in as money you are done with for a while. This next part catches most people. It explains why people believe they invested money that has been sitting in cash for months. Moving money into a brokerage account and buying an investment are 2 separate actions. The transfer is a bank thing. Money leaves one place, arrives in another, and lands as cash inside the account. Buying is an order you place, deliberately, on a specific fund, on a specific day. Cash sitting in a brokerage account is still your money. What it is doing is waiting. The fund you came to buy carries on without you until the order goes in. I have watched people describe themselves as invested for a year on the strength of a completed transfer. And honestly, the apps do little to correct the impression. The balance says $1,000. The balance is telling the truth. It answers a different question than the one being asked. Which brings us to the part everybody argues about online. Of the 3 decisions, it matters least. One broad index fund buys a slice of hundreds of American companies in a single order. Fidelity describes the S&P 500 as 500 common stocks chosen for market size, liquidity, and industry representation, weighted by market value. So one purchase gives you a proportional piece of the whole 500. The old problem with this was arithmetic. ETFs used to trade only in whole shares, so $1,000 often left a remainder stranded in cash. Fractional shares solved that. Fidelity's own page states that fractional purchases start at $1 and cover exchange-listed stocks and ETFs on the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ. So if you buy a broad index ETF at Fidelity, the whole 1,000 goes in on one order, and the remainder problem disappears. For a first $1,000, the buying decision reduces to one broad fund, whichever one your own account offers. Fidelity's number for the S&P 500 is an average annual return of 10% since the index launched in 1957, and 11.5% across the last 40 years as of December. An average is the thing people misread. The market does not hand out 10% on a schedule. The market delivers that 10% as a stack of wildly different years, a run of good ones, a flat one, and every so often a year like 2008, when the index lost more than a third of its value in 12 months. That is the risk, and I would rather say it here than leave it to a disclaimer. $1,000 left in the market through 2008 was worth under $650 by the end of that year, and the people who kept that loss were the ones who sold, which is an argument about your timeline. Money you need inside 5 years is generally not money for the market. Money you can leave for 20 gets to ride out the 2008s, and historically, that has been the trade. And now the part I would put on a poster, because the first 1,000 gets treated like the whole decision when it is the smaller half of it. The habit beats the lump sum, and the gap is not close. $1,000 invested once, with $100 a month added on top of it, comes to $78,500 over 20 years at the 10% average Fidelity publishes for the S&P 500. That is history applied forward, not a promise, and the real path includes losing years. That same 1,000 invested once and then left completely alone at that same rate comes to $6,700, almost 12 times as much. And to be straight with you about why, the second version puts $25,000 in rather than $1,000. That is the point. The lump sum is a rounding error next to $100 leaving a checking account on a schedule for 20 years. So if the 1,000 is the thing standing between you and starting, start with 200 and set the transfer up behind it. So, 3 decisions, in the order they actually matter. Whether the money can be left alone for years, which container holds it, and at this size, small balance and long timeline, the Roth case is the one worth reading up on. Check your own income against the IRS limits first, and if your job matches what you put into a retirement account, that is money added to your account the moment you contribute, subject to whatever vesting schedule your plan runs, so most people take it before anything else. Then one broad index fund inside it, bought in a single order for the whole amount. And then the monthly transfer, which is the part that does the work while you get on with your life. You do not have to pick the right year, you do not have to watch it, and you do not have to add much. The transfer is not impressive on any single month, which is exactly why people skip it. The $1,000 is how you start. The transfer is how you finish. And that's the honest answer. No hype, no noise. If it helped, hit subscribe, and the next one comes right to you. Skip the noise, build real wealth. See you in the next one.